Welcome to the show, everybody. Our guest, Abdullah Boulad, is the founder and CEO of the Balance Luxury Rehab Center, which is the world's premier luxury rehab and mental health clinic. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Living a Life in Balance. So, Abdullah, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, Anton. Good to be here.
Yeah, and to jump off, I'm very curious. So, obviously, you've created the world's premier mental health rehab center. How did you get into creating rehab centers? And yeah, what's the story of your life that led you to that and becoming so fascinated by trauma of all things?
Yes, it's a good question. Trauma, trauma is something we all kind of experience more or less during our life. But when we talk about trauma, it is some sort of what we experience on the one hand side, and the other hand side, it's about how we are conditioned. Yeah, we can talk about that later. But I experienced trauma in very early childhood myself. So I grew up in Beirut, Lebanon during the civil war. It was one of the toughest wars in the last decades, I would say. And growing up there as a young child, you see the world. This is reality. Yeah, you have not you don't know, you just don't distinguish between what is good, what is bad, or what is better or worse. Yeah. So this is your
Mm,
normal and reality. But growing up later, you realize then where certain things and behaviors and conditioned behaviors are coming from. And this happened much later when I started to understand the psychological side of of what it meant growing up in that condition. Yeah, so this is where it started. As a young boy, we moved to Switzerland, the area of Zurich. So you can imagine, you can tell from a war-torn country, traveling with my family to Switzerland, calm, peace, clean, maybe a bit too much. Yeah. So this by itself was also a kind of a traumatic experience. Think
oh,
about
wow.
it. So it's not just the negative thing what happens into our life, but the change and the transition, and then to grow up adapting to this new world for me. Yeah.
Mm,
So one of the biggest challenges later on was, of course, living in between two different worlds. This is also kind of a very exciting experience, retrospective right now. Yeah, but during that time, it was like, who am I? My identity, my
mm,
crisis. Am I this or am I that? And how am I supposed to behave?
mm,
Um, am I this Lebanese Muslim guy, or am I the Swiss
mm.
European Christian-oriented civilization person? So this shaped a lot, and trying to understand both sides has given me also the tools uh, to create empathy in life and try to understand why people expect you to be like that or that, and why they think this way, and try to see to understand behind what what um, what their uh, what their face and what they are really showing.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing you say about it can be difficult the transition between something negative to something positive. Because from my perspective, I have done some research on like veterans and stuff, people that come back from war, and a lot of them will say, being in war was actually in some sense like a beautiful thing. The camaraderie, the brotherhood, the mission, the focus. There was like, just living in war potentially. Again, I've never lived through war myself, so I can only speak from what I've heard. Is like there's such a focus. Like even if I'm going through a rough time in life, like sometimes our heads will spin, right? We'll go through chaos, and I've been kind of reflecting on this idea of like, do people in war kind of go through that same thing that maybe a first world problem is, like the ability to sit in a room, have no stimuli, and watch your mind kind of go chaotic. That's almost a privilege in a weird way. And it's like, I almost see it sometimes like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where if you are in fight or flight, if you're just surviving, you don't have the opportunity to really look into the mind, because you're always in survival. You always have a mission, right? And I think so from one perspective, I think I can understand, I can empathize. Yeah, what it would be like to have such a life of, it's like playing like a video game. Like it's so stimulating. Life itself is stimulating. And then you go into this, first world environment where, there's not all of that stimulation. And you just, yeah. And I know what you mean. Like, also the who am I? A lot of the time, let's say in war or something, part of your identity is I'm a soldier. I'm part of a squad. I have a brotherhood. This is my mission. Again, back to the strong, especially the masculine side of the psyche, I think, the mission. And so it would be an interesting traumatic experience to try to figure out everything on the other side of that,
Mm. Yes, when you are in during a traumatic experience, you don't realize this is traumatic, yeah,
Yeah.
unless at a later stage. Most of the time, when you start to feel, when it's following you in your mind, and you feel it in your body. If you have tension in your hands all the time, you cannot release it. And
Mm.
to your question, what trauma is and body and trauma can manifest on different levels. Yeah? So we don't. It's not just the experience and the thoughts and thinking about it and having anxiety about it. It's also subconscious,
Mm.
and the subconscious side is definitely on the physical level in your body. Our everything we feel, we go through in life is a chemical process. Yeah. Now, when we talk in that sense, and these chemicals, they go through our body. Yeah. Everything we do, we try to learn from. And while learning from it, we certain things we repeat, we condition in a way so we don't overwhelm our brain and our body by repetitive tasks. And so now what happens with traumatic experience, because it's a big alert for the mind as well as for the body, it saves it, and
Oh.
and it, um, it it is an automatic reaction coming out of it. And this is why we say um, trauma is on the one side in your mind, yeah, the thoughts, rumination, and it is in your physical body, passively. Uh, and it can get to a point where your nervous system is out of balance. It depends on what the traumatic experience is. Sometimes childhood trauma, only gets out in adulthood. So you don't experience much while you grow up. but as an adult, you may manifest certain behaviors, actions, thoughts, which are then related to your childhood trauma, the childhood experience. Yeah, and trauma doesn't have to be always from childhood. It can be, of course, at any incidents in life, and um, yeah, and this is where we step in as a rehab center and work on the different levels to release it and support people through these processes.
And with you, because I feel like you have an interesting story here, do you have any examples of, because it seems like you've lived through everything you just said, again, coming from, war-torn Lebanon, going to Switzerland. And then, so for you, how did you notice those traumas impact you over the course of your life? When did you notice them specifically with you?
Yeah, it's much later. I experienced these traumatic experiences, let's say, one experience growing up in a war country, and then at a later stage, then the move, and then the new country, and a new environment, being the dark foreigner who couldn't speak the language. At that time, Switzerland was very closed, still not open as it is today. Um, I always was that kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. I started my businesses in teen years, and hiring people and having others working for me, but also was interested in different things. Studied architecture, studied business, done MBAs, and I was very successful in the later on in the finance, venture capital fields, helping companies um, get ready, startup companies, businesses get structured, expand, and but I was overworking myself at the same time,
Yeah.
as being young, being healthy within your body, your body um, can can easily manage. Yeah, but at a certain up to a certain level. Yeah, and with me, it reached a level where I was overworking. I was a workaholic for sure.
Mm.
I had several incidences around my within my life and within my family, health incidences with my son and my wife, and which also brought me then to almost a kind of a collapse. I ended up with a heart attack in hospital. So,
Wow.
and this was a wake up moment where I felt like, okay, um, is it the real path I'm going to
Mm.
right now? And I started to dig deeper in healthcare, because healthcare, mental health, but as well as physical health, I was very interested always. My father was working in hospital, and I was attached and near to the medical field all my life. I was also investing and being part of businesses in the medical and healthcare field. So always this attracted to that area. So I dig deeper. I studied different areas of holistic health, um, also non-traditional evidence-based treatment options, where you can imagine in Switzerland is one of the best healthcare systems in the world, one could say. And it is, if it comes to, if you need a surgery, you go, you do it, and you recover from it. It's done perfectly. That would recommend everyone to do this, go to Switzerland. But when it comes to the traditional medicine, classic medicine, does not have answers to all areas. So, especially because something happened to my little boy at that time. So I was looking, okay, are there other things, other treatment options out there he could profit from, and I could profit from, or everyone could profit from. This interest of digging deeper in these different areas and mental health. I started psychology and went into different types of talking therapies, treatment, technology-based treatments. Wanted to understand how things work. That's my curiosity of an entrepreneur trying to understand where, why things come from. And this was my beginning of transformation myself, and to to bring myself and my family in balance, back in balance.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, when I was in university, I used to do a lot of presentations on the idea of like rehabilitative justice. You're likely aware of that from Switzerland, Scandinavian countries, and for anyone who doesn't know, like in America, we have a strong punitive justice system, so we're punishing people for making mistakes. And then in Scandinavia, it might not be everywhere, but they have a strong focus of this thing called rehabilitative justice, where when someone makes a mistake, you try to rehabilitate them back into being a normal human being. And obviously in America, when people go to jail, when they come out, they're stigmatized, they're shunned a lot of the time, they have a hard time getting a good career path. Where in Scandinavia, from my research, especially when I was in university, it seems like they're trying to make these people into normal human beings in society again, so that they can go out, get a normal job. And I think that the thesis from that perspective is that, or at least my idea is that, if you have empathy, I'd hope that you can get a second chance. That's kind of where I draw the line. Like when it comes to psychopaths and sociopaths, that's slightly different because they might not have the ability. They might not. I'm not sure. This is an interesting thing that you might have information on. But from my perspective, sociopaths and psychopaths don't have the ability for empathy, and therefore, if they do something horrendous, is there a point in trying to rehabilitate them? Where most people, if they make a mistake, a lot of the time I look at it as trauma. I go, man, if I grew up in that abusive household, my dad was kicking the shit out of me, my mom was abusing me, maybe even like raping me or whatever, there's a strong chance that I might do the same thing. And it's not that the human being, there's anything fundamentally wrong with them. They haven't been given the right role models to even know what love looks like, empathy, connection. Like I know with myself already, Abdullah, like I've been learning in the last year greatly just how to communicate and empathize with people. Like I thought I was a good communicator and an empathizer, and I realized, like, as I got, stronger, more courageous friends, they'd sometimes tell me like, I don't feel seen by you right now. Like I don't feel heard. I feel like you're kind of talking at me. And so like already, like I can see, as someone who, like, I think I'm a good human being, but already I can see how I can hurt people. I can make people feel misunderstood. And so this kind of goes back to what you were saying, and I'm curious about you with the rehab centers. What have you noticed are the core tenets of rehabilitation?
Yes, it, I believe. Let's say you mentioned people in jail coming out and the reason of being there. Let's exclude really the severe psychiatric cases here.
Yeah.
Except those, I think everyone has good intention and reason within their families and close people, in some way. But also in my position, I see so many people, privileged people, they might not see it this way, but they've been growing up rich, yeah, and trauma doesn't have to be just you grow up unprivileged, yeah. So you're beaten, sexually abused, or whatever. This can happen, of course, but also no love at home, and other reasons when you neglect. This is also a big traumatic experience for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So the financial means don't are not important here. Yeah, and I believe in rehabilitation. Yeah, I believe that people can get second chances and do different, because sometimes just things happen because of uh, they don't plan to do things. They happen. Yeah. So give them the chance, help them out is crucial, I believe. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what have you noticed? How broad are the kinds of human beings that come in? And I'm guessing they all come from, is it a addiction focused rehabilitation center? Like specifically, is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Like, what is it like?
Yes, what we do is not purely limited to addiction. Of course, we have people with addiction, but the addiction itself is a coping mechanism people use to um, to cover up the emotional side. This could be anxiety, depression, or very often traumatic experiences. And they cannot live with these feelings, emotions, so they hide it by using alcohol, drugs, or uh, substances. Yeah. So it is addiction, but not limited to it. We have also clients, they come for different reasons, and they don't have addiction. So all kind of mental health issues as well. Very often, what we see is that our clients are disconnected between their body and mind, and this disconnection they don't feel. They can be super fit, they can overtrain, but they do it not because they love their body, but they hate their body and they hate themselves. Yeah.
Oh,
And what's important in that sense is a sense of safety here. Yeah, because you can think about if someone is going through life and traumatic experience or was burned out. This is as we talked about it. This is a physical as well as a mental issue. Yeah, and it is because also they cannot switch between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So they are always on the edge, and they don't allow their body to relax, to recover. Yeah? And there are different techniques you can do that, but you can do that as a normal human being. But if you have achieved a certain tipping point, you cannot go out of it just by yourself by doing this at home. So that's why people need them to get into treatment. And what's important when they first arrive is, as I mentioned, is the sense of safety. They need to feel safe, because trauma is about being always on alert
yeah.
and thinking what happened to me might happen again and again. And they need to feel safe and trust what they are doing. Without that, there is no deeper work possible, for sure. And yeah, so also when we talk about trauma, there are different methods how to release this trauma. We have the body, we have the mind. So we have to work on different levels, and what works for you, but not for another person. So it's not like I always say it's not like a car. You go to fix a tire and then you drive out of it and you know exactly what to do. It is a process,
Mm.
and everyone with trauma is about trying to see the bigger picture and not just because they feel they are trapped in what they go through and their thoughts and physically the physical interactions. So there are different techniques. Yeah, this could be on psychotherapy level, so talking therapies to process, to understand where their feelings, emotions are coming from. Yeah? This is an important to accept it, to accept what is and process. Yeah? When I say process, it is very important that every treatment around trauma is happening hand in hand, means releasing and processing at the same time. If you would, with a highly traumatized person, if you would release trauma at once, this would overwhelm his system. Let's call it that way, and this is counterproductive. Yeah? So because you can. There are different methods out there, and lately people try non-evidence-based treatments like psychedelics and so on, and they are attracted to this, and it's fancy, but they can intensify this situation. Yeah, they are in. So I would be very careful with that because it cannot be processed if you don't have someone to guide you professionally through such a process. Yeah. Um, but for example, when we talk about, so this was the mind side, yeah. But on the mind side, it's also a biological mind. There are treatments today we call neuromodulation, yeah? Like a technique called neurofeedback. Maybe you have heard of.
Yeah.
So this is something evidence-based. This is proven, and this is helpful. Can be helpful. Again, don't understand this correctly because every person is different. You have to try this, you have to try this, and the combination, which is very very crucial here. Then the biochemical side. Yeah, you need to understand the biochemistry. Is there anything a lack, and especially because nervous system is not in balance, this has effect on the biochemical side as well. So you need to look into this. You need to look into the gut level bacteria. This has effect on our mood and feelings and on our mind. We know that from today from the gut brain connection side. Yeah? Um, we there are different authors, therapists. They have developed system like somatic based. So where you need to release trauma from your body by doing somatic body-based treatments. This could be rolfing, this could be somatic experiencing, certain type of massages, acupuncture, yoga, breath work. All these body holistic treatments are very crucial, and there are science behind that. Combination of these treatment options help recover from trauma better than using medication.
Yeah.
So that's why what we do is we combine different methods, and we decide based on every person situation which one is really the best here. But it's also try and error. Yeah. And this is what I would also recommend to everyone. You have to try different things and see what works for you. Yeah? There are different methods out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big thing I get from all of that is there's two distinct parts of releasing trauma, and it's releasing the trauma and processing what you've just released. because of what you just said. If all you do is release the trauma, you don't process it through the mind, then it can be a lot. And even, when you mentioned psychedelics, like I've done a lot of psychedelics. I very much enjoy psychedelics. But one thing that everyone says who knows anything about psychedelics is like you have to have either like, in these worlds, it's like a shaman who's essentially a psychiatrist or something. They're help processing the traumas and stuff. A lot of them are very psychological. But yeah, like in our circles, those that are into psychedelics, one of the biggest things everyone says is that one of the worst things you can do is do a big psychedelic trip by yourself. Like that can be terrible for what you just said, because you can end up releasing some wild things that get pulled up into the surface that used to be in the back where you could just live your life, and now it's like I remember with me when I was 20 years old, I took 3.5 grams of mushrooms by myself. Bad idea. And I had like disassociation from reality for probably 6 months. Legitimately, there'd be times I'd be like waiting for the school bus to go to university, and I would just like get hit with this idea like I don't even exist, and that my mom doesn't exist and reality doesn't exist. Dude, like I literally had this for 6 months, and I was like panicking sometimes because nobody understood it. Nobody really around me has done psychedelics in any real way. At this time, this was back in probably 2014. There wasn't a lot of research on psychedelics. It was still stigmatized at that point in a very big way. And so who could you go to? Right? It was a very dangerous thing. And luckily for me, I processed all of it, or maybe not all of it, but I processed enough to the point where it became an asset because it helped me understand very subconscious aspects of my psyche. But then again, by the nature of what I do with my podcast and my YouTube channels, I'm always almost doing self-therapy sessions. And I don't think they're as good or as beneficial as someone who's a licensed therapist, because someone who's really trained in this area can see the blind spots that you can't see yourself. Like if I'm trying to process things, I'm unaware of the things I'm blind to, just naturally, right? And so it's really helpful, I feel, to, be at a rehab center where you have people that know the patterns, that they know what they're looking for. They know the pillars of what most people that are going through this kind of thing experience. And yeah, I'm curious from your perspective, what is your perspective on the growing research around psychedelics?
I think there are some promising researchers from what I can see with psychedelics. Of course, being still far away from being implemented in daily routine in treatment centers, not in Europe, definitely. I understand you tried it. It was an experience for you. Maybe many people on certain levels try it, and they can be helpful. In our perspective, from a professional view, from a psychiatric, psychotherapeutic, and holistic medical view, we 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 are very careful with that because we never know at what state a person is mentally, yeah,
Very true.
and and that's why, yeah, it's not something we use, and or we would recommend to anyone to use it unless there is more study and understanding of the mechanism and for which kind of person and how to test and when to use it, because there are options out there also today like ketamine treatments and the work in a similar direction, let's say, but even that um, is difficult to judge who should do it and who not.
Mm,
And this is the most difficult part to decide. when is it appropriate and where not. Whereas with other options, it's proven, it's given, and you can achieve good success. It's sometimes I feel like psychedelics is like, yeah, it might help or not. It's like luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get you, man. Like 100%. I think I agree. It is a lot of the time luck for people. And it's also, from what I gather from what you're saying, the treatments that you have are measurable to an extent. Like, you do
And
this,
repetitive.
repetitive and
And we can
measurable.
repeat it. We can exactly.
Exactly. And then where psychedelics is like, yeah, I'm with you, man. It's like sometimes some people do it, nothing happens. Well, even me, I'll use cannabis, I'll use like mushrooms and stuff. And what I do notice, even about cannabis, I can take the exact same amount 5 times in a row, the exact same amount on, an empty stomach every time with the same seemingly similar environment. And I can get different trips. I can get one trip that it's a beautiful trip. I can get one that's very philosophical. And then I'll have one where I'm like literally shaking and convulsing. And I've literally had that. Like I've been in bed and for whatever reason, I'm not sure. I know you don't seem to go into this area as much, but like what I've noticed is I've had 2 really bad trips on cannabis. Both of them happened before bed when I was very tired. And it felt like my subconscious mind was like being hijacked, or my conscious mind, like I had like a demon speaking to me in a way that I had never ever experienced in my life before. Especially because when I look at my usual self-talk to myself, it's not usually very dark or violent. It's just not usually the way my brain works. I can sometimes feel afraid, but it's not usually violent. And this time it was literally like a voice saying, I control you. And it would literally it would say, I can like make you shake uncontrollably. And then literally for 10 minutes, I'd be just shaking in my bed, like convulsing. It was brutal and it scared the shit out of me. And, right there, from what you just said, it's like, I get what you're saying. Because like for me, I did the same thing I always did. I took the same amount. I've done it before bed so many times. And it usually helps me get to bed if I'm having a hard time. But that one time or those 2 times out of probably 30 or 50 or whatever gave me a radically different high. And I'm pretty set in the head pretty well. So imagine someone who might have a background in schizophrenia or just have some really deep traumas. I could definitely see how this is an area that we have to understand much better before we start to implement it in a big way. So I'm absolutely with you. I'm definitely more of a psychedelic crusader. I do like the stuff a lot, but I can see that, yeah, the stuff that a good rehab center will go is like measurable, repeatable. Like our number one thing is you've come to us to try to get help. We want to be able to help you. We don't want to give you something that's random. This is again why we have all of this time and research and professionals, because when you come in, we want to be able to solve the challenge or whatever you want to call it and get you out of here. And another question I have is, from your perspective, do you think you can completely ever heal trauma? Like completely over the course of a lifetime?
Let me answer this question, but first comment on your cannabis experiences. Well, I mean, we know today. It depends on at what age you consume cannabis and what amount. It can have long-lasting effects on your brain. Yeah, so this is nothing new. But not only that, if you have a genetic predisposition, yeah, you could, even with consuming cannabis in a certain amount, create like a cannabis-induced psychosis, and and this can be, of course, yeah, very 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 tough for the rest of someone's life. Yeah. So it's not, it's enjoyable maybe for many. It can also do harm people don't think of. We see these hard cases. That's why I mentioned that. Yeah. And to your question, if trauma can ever be healed, I believe trauma you can learn to live with trauma. Yeah, you can train your brain to accept it, but also your body if you are in a certain routine and if you have your certain environment around you. Yeah. So creating this sense of safety, you have your loving people around you. Also, when we talk about loving a child, if a child would fall down, yeah, this could be a traumatic experience. But what usually parents do, they take their child and hug to give him a certain sense of safety. And of course, we know today if we touch each other, we also exchange we release chemical reactions within our body. So out of traumatic experience, you can changing your lifestyle after trauma, after treatment, serious treatment. You changing your lifestyle and accepting, processing your past and become content with it. Yeah. So there is definitely ways out of it. Yes.
And I recall you use the word you can learn to live with your trauma. You can learn to accept your trauma and live alongside it. And then a previous part of our discussion, we talked about the idea of releasing trauma and processing trauma. Mm-hmm. So from the word release, it would seem that release means to purge or to actually get rid of it. And then you mentioned things like acupuncture, which is a physical thing that would seem to be able to release trauma. So from that standpoint, do you actually think that we can release all of our trauma to the point where we don't even have to accept it? We don't have to live alongside it. It is literally gone. And we've released it and we've processed what we've released and we're a blank slate again from the trauma perspective.
Yes. Look at, if you take a paper and just put it together and open it again, you still have
the lines, the creases.
You see the lines. Yeah, you see the lines. So releasing it is because this tension. If people with trauma, they always they have their, like, you can feel you're tense. Your body language, your fingers, your hands. This is the same with this paper. If you can release it, open it, it's still there. It's still there. But it depends on how you after processing it, releasing it, use your routine and activities you do to stay in balance. And that's why I love this word balance, because being in balance means you have to do an effort and constant effort. It's not just a one-off thing and you're there and now you're healed for the rest of your life. Life does not work like that. It's an up and down, and then another experience will add on top of it. So it does not overwhelm you again and again and again with any additional experience in life. We have to develop and train our internal resilience muscle. Let's call it this way. And this resilient, we have to become more resilient and accepting what comes out from the outer world on us. And to your question, if trauma can be released, oh wow, yes. We have clients, if they get a massage, an acupuncture, a certain trigger points within the body, they start crying. They don't know why. Or after the session, they're completely down. And this is exactly the point where things need to be processed. So what kind of feelings, what kind of emotions, what is it, where is it coming from? And if you do this just by yourself, it's difficult. And if you have certain thoughts, it can be very dangerous as well. So yes, trauma can be released. That's why it needs to be processed, but you need to continue with it, and you need to learn and become stronger. You get out of the process stronger, more resilient. Yeah, if it makes sense.
Yeah, kind of what I get from you is that. So I like your crumpled page analogy. So it's like, naturally we're just a page, and then trauma is like the condensing, the tension, the creating of a paper ball that's very tight. And then we can release the trauma, where I think the word release gave me the wrong image. Like we're like poof, gone. Like it's just like the wind is gone. But maybe release, a better way of looking at it, is you have the crumpled up ball, and to release the trauma is actually to like have it open up into a paper again. And as you said, even though it's a flat piece of paper, it still has the creases. There's still the momentum. There's still the imprints there's still a propensity for that piece of paper to ball up into a ball again. Again, those creases, even when it's it's like there's almost like this invisible magnetism that it wants to recrumple. And so where it would seem, from what I gathered from what you're talking about, is where the resiliency muscle is the fact that your entire life is probably, after you have that trauma, a series of releasing and maintaining so that it doesn't start to close in again, because it's going to be this constant back and forth, and you want to keep it as open and as relaxed as you possibly can. Does that make sense?
Yes, and looking at it, that every life is about, if you go through life, things will happen, and they are not always good. So also bad experiences, and let's call it scars. So if you have some, accepting it, and at some point you might be proud of it because it made you stronger. And the same is with trauma. But because trauma, you cannot just like, it's gone. If it's related to grief, for example, it's not recoverable. So you have to accept it. You have to learn to live with it, and to see the awe, and be grateful what you have else in life and what you can do in life. So to shift perspective as well, reframing.
I hear you. And to switch gears a little bit here, I wanted to finish off the podcast with this question, which is, why do you think we are experiencing this societal mental health crisis? It seems to be worse than it was before, but maybe it's just an interpretation thing.
Yes. Mental health, the last decades, especially, and this is what's been always important to me and interesting to me, how society has been developing. Because coming from a Lebanese background, where you live within a family community, you see each other every day, you get visitors without knowing every night, evening, and any given time. It's you feel within a society and embedded. And what I see in Europe, North America, the Western world, is loneliness is a key factor here. And there are studies that they say there are 60% of people between 15 and 30, they feel lonely. They experience loneliness. So 60% of all between 15 and 30, and about 26% would die earlier. because of this feeling. So this loneliness in on our mental health has definitely an effect. This is one side. Yeah, I would say being lonely. Also, you cannot process certain anxieties. You focus too much on what's happening out there and don't focus on yourself and what you can change. So we have wars, and we have, since COVID, this has been intensified. You think COVID has intensified even the loneliness with this group of people, and the anxiety has increased as well. Financial insecurity, war, energy crisis, all these aspects have effect on top of it. And if someone is lonely, they don't have people to process it very well. Yeah. Usually, if you live in a community, you talk about things, you have the hugs, you have the touches, which are very important when it comes to processing emotions and feelings.
Wow.
So I think this is number one crisis in the world when it comes to mental health today, and this is definitely an effect of a societal development we have been experiencing, the individualization, and but this has left people be alone and feel lonely.
Yeah, I definitely, I can relate to that heavily for sure. And what I've noticed about my own feelings of loneliness is that as you are lonely for an extended period of time, you become, or at least I notice, I can sometimes have a propensity to become afraid of the burden I put on other people. So if I'm lonely and I'm going through a hard time, I will feel shame and guilt on the idea of allowing someone else to see me in that state, because I'll be afraid that I'll bring them down, that I can, yeah, that my energy is too much, that my pain is too much, that what I'm going through is too much. And when you're describing these cultures where they're just like, there's this natural ebb and flow of sharing, there's this natural hugging and touching and stuff, it almost feels so foreign to me. And it feels like part of me very much longs for that. Like, wow, imagine if I didn't have to be ashamed of myself, because there's literally, there's a shame I feel about myself, that when I feel shame when I'm going through a hard time, and I don't feel like, yeah, I just feel like I'm a ticking time bomb, and that anyone that I open up to, I'm handing them a ticking time bomb, you know?
Yes. Um, yeah, I understand what you mean. And think about it. So many other people feel the same and feel this loneliness. Yeah. And the shame associated with it.
Yeah.
This is huge. When what also comes on top of this is the way of how we think. Yeah, we get into this autopilot mode. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we don't get out of it just by ourselves. Yeah? So
Ah.
if we and it's turning inside. So we have our self-talk, the ashamedness, and unless we go out, we talk, we show ourselves, or we start to create self-love, but again, out of your own energy. This is difficult, you know.
Really?
Otherwise, you would not have ended in this situation. So the way out of it is to develop self-love, accepting, and don't try to please others, people pleasing.
Yeah.
So there are different aspects. I write about it in my book also, how you could work on this, because You mentioned something very interesting, because one side is about you, how you feel, how your emotion, your mental health is, and the other thing is your interaction with others. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I believe is we have to start, and in my book, I explain like a pyramid, yeah, where at the bottom you have to focus and nurture your body in the first place. If like healthy eating habits, physical activities, relaxation techniques, and a healthy lifestyle and routine, and then you can tackle what is on the mental side. Means, so what is it? You need to understand yourself. You need to understand how your mind ticks actually, and to get out of this autopilot mode. And autopilot is really about always thinking the same way and doing the same things. And autopilot can be important, as I mentioned earlier. This is the conditioning, yeah. But we have to control our mind, not let our mind control us, our feelings, emotions, and actions. So, um, and this can be accessed by being mindful and practicing mindfulness, for example, meditation and the things, but also know your own purpose and vision, where you want to go and what you want to achieve in life, and what you want to leave behind. And also, what I mentioned, once you stop people pleasing, yeah, understanding your limiting beliefs and live more towards what, be grateful for what you have and for what you are as a person, because every human is worth something and you are unique here on earth. So finding and looking at yourself, what this is, yeah, and accept yourself, because only if you accept yourself and love yourself, you will by yourself believe that others can accept you and love you. If you don't accept and love yourself, you don't think that others could do the same, even though it might not be correct. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
absolutely. Go on. Go on.
yeah. And once you have your mental health side in balance, we call it in balance, you can move up to the next level about the social interaction. Where you can really have deeper conversations, meaningful connections, uh, followers on this and this platform, but at the end, it's about what's really meaningful. And now we are back on this tribe thing and who's close and hugging. Uh, at our company here, I mean, the therapist and everyone working, we hug ourselves. We hug each other. It's in front of the client. We hug the clients. It's a natural thing for us. We love it. So only then you can be connect well with others if you're in balance. Um, and there are different, of course, ways and how you communicate with others, how you listen to what the other has to say, because listening is so important when it comes to build meaningful connections. It's not about what I have to say, it's about what I can listen and understand what the other has to say. And if everyone would do this with empathy and compassion, there you create connection. And this is also, by the way, something, if you practice this within organizations and so on, is very helpful for productivity and happiness within the organization. But on a private level, that's key. Yeah. And only if you have managed your physical, mental, and social interactions, you can be ready, from my perspective, to the to the spiritual side, where I believe strong resilience comes, and accepting your life and your destiny in life, as well as uh, being positive. You become a positive, calm, inner balanced person, like a tree with strong roots, which just experiences wind and storms and nice weather, but you just observe it. You are this balance in yourself. But this is a process, and every human has to go through this process. None of us is born being in a zen.
Hmm. In your perspective, because you brought up people pleasing as one of the largest ways that, yeah, we can lose ourselves in a sense. And I definitely I come from a codependent background because of the way I grew up and stuff, and people pleasing is definitely something that I have in my personality. So I'm curious, from your perspective, for anyone that has people pleasing, what have you noticed are the most efficient ways of releasing that personality pattern?
It starts with you. It starts with you accepting yourself and loving yourself. I mean, practicing self-love is like a difficult term, because that, what does it entail, you know?
Yeah.
It starts with trying to understand how your mind works. Very scientific. I try to be very scientific here and not too spiritual, because this is repetitive. Yeah. Read my book, you will understand. So you try to understand your mind, how our mind psychologically works. Yeah. You try to find your purpose in life. I mentioned that. So you don't get to self-love if you don't know what you want to do in life. And
Mm.
and knowing what you want to leave behind. Yeah. And because at the end, thinking about, and this concept, I have kind of developed this feeling where my father passed away. Yeah, 5 years ago, my father passed away. He was a very strong figure to me and to our family. And what happened is, I was putting his belongings he left behind, clothes, and you know, how he went through his stress and pleasing maybe others and in life. And I was like, wait a moment. So is this what we leave behind?
Mm.
So why are we doing this? I just ask why, and I wanted to understand. So it's more than just stuff we leave behind. It's about how we can be for others, um, and and this was the moment where you accept even death. When you get to the point where you accept death, doesn't mean you're ready for it or you want it, but okay, if I accept death means I know what I do here, and I like what I do, but I'm not afraid of that. Yeah.
Mm.
If I'm not afraid of death, then break it down. So I have joy for life. If I'm not afraid of death, I will enjoy my life. And what is it I want to do in life? So you then can develop further what it means not to please others, because if I please others, it's not my happiness. So my goal should be in life to create happiness for myself and the people around me. And if I do good for others, I'm happy. You will get something out of it. Um, this is kind of the concept of um,
Win-win.
importancy, yeah, to feel significant, to get the feeling if you give, you get more out of it. If you help others, if you give, you can buy, let's say, just to give a materialistic example, if I buy something for myself, I can be happy with it for a while, and then it becomes normal. If I give something to you and you show me your happiness, I'm great. It's my bigger pleasure, and this is one of the reasons why I do what I do. I love what I do. I don't have to do it. I enjoy the process, and I give people something they feel rejuvenated afterwards, and they tell me, "Look, you saved my life." And if I hear something like that and get this back, this is the biggest thing you can get in life. So what more, so love what you do. You will love and accept yourself as well. You don't do it for others. You don't do what you do just because others will think positive about you. That's a different thing. You need to do what you love to do and what brings you joy and satisfaction. And then you will be good with it, and you will make other people happy, and they might do the same with others and others.
And lastly, before we finish up here, I'm curious. We were talking about also additionally the self-love thing. What are the routines and non-negotiables that you do on a daily basis and a weekly basis to make sure that you keep your mental health up?
Mm-hmm. So first thing, food. If you don't treat, it's first thing, you need to have a routine. Most people run through their lives, through the days, they don't have time for it, but this then affects our body. You don't sleep well, and then you have for sure also experienced like hungry, being your
Hangry.
mood drops and hangry, yes. So so have the right food at the right time, yeah. Have your physical activity throughout the week, and practice mindfulness every day. And this could mean that you could just have a walk and listen, try to find awe in everything you go. Try to find what we do at home with every evening when we come together with my children. I have 3 children, so we have within the everyone should tell like 3 things he's grateful for during the day happened to him, and this is something we practice, for example, or when in the morning you just to stop, to make these little breaks in between. I was when I grew up, I never had I'm not a religious person, don't follow a specific religion, but when tried to understand religions, they started to make sense to me from a practical mindfulness perspective. If I look at the Islam, and where they 5 times per day they do the prayer, they take the time off, meditate. Now I use terms we are more in the modern world used to. They meditate, they do breaks to relax and shut off their mind. And this is what we need to learn. Yeah. Okay, not so strict. We don't have to follow a certain rule, but we learn mantras and we do different things just to shut down the mind. We know from a scientific perspective now today what this is. Yeah. So it's not just following it blindly, but understanding what to do. So for doing a mantra is fine, but you can also practice mindfulness using different things, using your breath, using walking to process your thoughts. Because we know if we walk, we activate both sides of the brain. This increases the efficiency of our brain power. So, but also use our senses. Try to smell, try to listen, try to feel your body. So during the day, just create these little things. Stand up, go for a walk for 10 days, 10 minutes, sorry. um, uh, I go every day with my wife in the forest. So this also is good for the couple. So we talk to each other, not just a routine and children and running and technical things, grocery shopping and so on. So I think everyone, what you need to do is really design what is it for food you have to take in every week, what is it sport activities on a bigger scale you want to do, and create this little mindfulness activities in between. Yeah.
Beautiful. And now it's shameless plug time. So please share with myself and everybody where we can find you and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, so you can visit The Balance Rehab. That's our website. You can reach out there if you need anything. If you just need a recommendation, whatever you're up to, I'm happy to support, and my team, of course. And yeah, you can also find my book for further inspirations on Amazon. Search for my name or Living a Life in Balance. You will get it.
All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Abdullah, for coming on. This was a pleasure, brother.
Thank you very much, Anton. Happy to be here with you.
All right. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. I love you. Bye. Welcome back, everyone. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to check out more episodes just like this one, click right here, and I'll see you in the next one.